You are listening to Wicked Psychotherapists, a podcast where two psychotherapists show you that taking care of and learning about mental health doesn't have to be wicked.
Hey, it's Tanya.
Hi, it's Erin, and welcome to Wicked Psychotherapists.
So this week we're veering off track from the Adam Sandler ride, I guess, and we're going toward a few others. This is just a detour, but we are going to be talking about a sequel of movies popular in the early 2000s, Meet the Parents, Meet the Fockers. I thought this would have some interesting family dynamics and themes to talk about. These are just pretty good movies, pretty funny. I've seen Meet the Fockers quite a few times too, but I kind of just went through some clips. So I'm trying to maybe think of
I think that's why we decided to combine them because so often when you think of one of the movies, you think of the other, and it just kind of meshes together. So this way we can talk about both parents and everything, and it's just makes it a little bit more, congruent.
We meet one of the main characters, Greg, Ben Stiller, whose full name is Gaylord, which does not help him in the situations he gets in. He's a nurse, or a male nurse, as people keep referring to him as, but he is wanting to propose to his girlfriend. He's going to go meet the parent. Comes to realize that her dad is a special type of character, I guess. He's very controlling, very suspicious, kind of trying to interrogate him from the start. Greg is just trying to please him. He's very anxious, very eager to please around Jack, Pam's father. The family's preparing for Pam's sister's wedding. Greg is invited to that. So there's a lot of kind of tensions and, things that are needing to be planned, a lot of family events. And Jack kind of is talking about, to be in the family, you have to, everything stays in the family circle. Once you're in, you can't go out. It's very much like, us against the world and my family. Yeah. He's a control freak for sure. He's got some control issues. But yeah, what was your impression of the dad who's played by?
Probably as somebody coming into the family, like anyone who's first gone into meeting your significant other's family member, you're very intimidated. So he really wanted to put that all right, I'm going to put it on the upteenth degree and belittle your profession and just really make Greg question himself and feel probably even more anxious. It was probably very intimidating having your girlfriend's father first meeting, which was not a good experience.
Yeah, he was putting him through the ringer for sure. He was really trying to make him put him down.
He'd call him
because
he kept calling him a nurse
directly.
Like the male nurse Merce, and and
definitely didn't respect his profession.
Didn't really want him, dating his daughter. It just really wasn't a good thing.
No one was good enough for his Pam. You can tell Pam was his kind of golden child. And not to mention the bar is set impossibly high. And here's Greg, just a very nice, caring guy, but he's an anxious guy and he makes mistakes. And that's just not acceptable to Jack.
And also when he's... plus if he's comparing him to past boyfriends and everything too, it's really difficult.
Oh, yeah. The past fiance that's utterly perfect. And he's very much just making him feel insecure. And it's working because Greg does not have a high level of self-confidence, feel like he needs to be accepted. And he just is noticing that this guy's giving him the third degree constantly. So he's just trying to pass every test, which is really funny, but at the same point, you feel for the guy. But yeah, I was wondering, have you ever had an experience where you had to meet parents or friends' parents who were just really intimidating?
Well, I don't know. I often wonder, if my dad was that person, two people, when they first meet him, because he was a lifer Marine, just very, always still got the short and neat haircut. Just recently, I think he goes every 3 weeks instead of every 2 weeks. It's just very, he is an intimidating guy, especially when I was younger. He's really tall, 6 foot something, very in shape. He was a Marine. It's all about him. So I imagine that some people, when they first meet my dad, it was probably similar to that. Oh my God, who is this fellow?
Yeah. I could definitely see that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it can be tough. I don't know that I've had an experience with that. I definitely felt with my in-laws, it was just more of and overwhelmed because I was meeting a lot of his Portuguese family. Sometimes there was a language barrier. There's just a lot of them. They like to gather a lot, and there's a lot of them, lots of talking and stuff, so that can be just a lot at first, but I don't think anybody was
too, like, because
intimidating,
you mentioned friends
really.
too. I remember some friends' parents just meeting him for the first time and being nervous, but I think that's normal when you're a teenager. I definitely didn't feel intimidated by my husband's family. I felt welcomed. But yeah, I do wonder how my dad was perceived by friends and family when they first met him.
Yeah, military people
Yeah,
can
especially
definitely maybe
Marines.
give off a vibe just because,
Yeah.
that can be intense. We learned that Jack is, he's not coming out and saying it because it's kind of a family secret that he was a former CIA operative, and Greg starts to suspect he's still running operations, and he's kind of just, running operations on like getting a honeymoon set up for his other daughter, Debbie, the one that's getting married, and speaking in Thai, and also just watching Greg. So giving him the, what was it?
Yeah.
The lie detector test
or whatever
which is
did
very
it.
intense.
Just, yeah. Oh yeah,
it was
that's
in
right.
the trailer. The camera was like a built-in, like underneath something, like it kind of raised up and went. Oh, that made me so claustrophobic when I saw that. So like goes into the floor.
I
and
hope
then
this is where I live forever.
Yeah, I think Jack did a good job of making Greg feel small, and Greg was just kind of, I think he started to gather confidence that even though he was messing up because he was a very anxious person. So I think when you're anxious, you're going to tend to kind of slip up.
Yeah, you sometimes
even more
overshare
and
too when you're in a state of anxiety. You might just not remember exactly what the truth is because Greg really wanted to impress Jack. And so he's probably like, oh gosh, I want to answer the right thing. Some of the questions he was asking were so personal and so insane.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's intense. It's like in front of other people. He's kind of embarrassing him. I don't like that. I either get really mad or I trip up. It definitely can make me do some silly things. But Greg is pretty strong staying on, I think, and trying to meet his own. Doesn't he lose the cat, or he lets the cat out? Jinx, who's like the superior cat that the dad has trained. And then he tries to, because he's like, oh man, he's going to be mad. So he tries to get this stray cat.
He doesn't
and
know
just
all
be
the
like,
tricks.
oh, it looks like him, or like a shelter cat. And then the neighbor ends up coming back with Jinx. And he's like, it just seems like he's alive. Really, it's like he just was
I can't tell you the
scared
truth. You're going to kill
happen.
me.
Yeah. And then, Greg just has his moments. They're playing water volleyball. He accidentally hits the ball and it hits Pam's sister's face right before her wedding. Jack's just like, what's wrong with you? He does a good job of ousting him, basically. He just does not think he's good enough. And he kind of makes it look like, oh, he did it to himself. So he's very manipulative. It's almost, it's like, in the CIA, he probably learned some psychological tricks, I'm guessing.
Like really overtake, whatever situation he's in and making Greg feel like really, less than, probably increase his anxiety. That's probably part of Jack's plan too. Like, how can I make him a fumbling mess or, make my daughter not want to date him?
Yeah. And I think ultimately, this is what bothers me about these movies. And maybe it's just like not so much anymore, but definitely from like the early 2000s and before, where it's like, the resolve is Jack overhears. Finally, Greg leaves because he's just like, okay, they clearly don't want me. I'm messing up. He's
they're
just
trying
like,
to get the ex-boyfriend
home, whatever. And Pam talks to him. And Pam talks to Greg on the phone. Jack overhears how much she really loves him and cares about him. So he wants to rectify. He's like, oh, I don't want to hurt my daughter. And like, he didn't see that all along, but he saw that in the phone call.
Like the whole relationship. I don't see that in person. I just see what I want to see.
Yeah, so I think it kind of shows how much control Jack has, but also how much is maybe kept from him as well.
Yeah.
He's a formidable character, right? He's tough to be around.
Yeah, his family is probably intimidated too. They probably learned to walk on eggshells around him. So they can be perceived as the perfect daughter. Like whatever role he's assigned them, they probably want him to still them as that, because he is probably a little scary or, a little intense, even at home in their unit that he wants to protect so much.
Yeah, and the fact that he was in the CIA, they probably had to deal with things that were like, okay, I don't know, but I have to just be okay with that. They kind of got used to that pattern, and bringing someone in is very serious to Jack, and they understand that. They probably feel, I think the mom and Pam especially really feel for Greg and see that he's a nice person. But the mom kind of has just dealt with his antics for a long time. So she comes off a little passive, but kind of like she will be able to get through to him sometimes. That's probably how she had
it's a state of paranoia too. Like if you didn't know what his intentions are or what his background is.
I don't know how anybody could be in a family with or be a person who is like in the FBI or CIA. I would just be very paranoid. And plus, you would have a whole separate life you could not share and things you couldn't share with your partner or family. It's just tough. It comes out in some way. You know?
And a lot of people probably don't even know what he does for a living. So he probably just has to share half of himself with them.
Yeah, like I think he says he's a florist, but Greg finds that weird from the start. He brings a rare flower and Jack doesn't know what it is. And he's like, oh, that's weird. So he's kind of suspicious, trying to sniff people out, but he himself is carrying this big secret. Kind of hypocritical. And then for the next in the series, Meet the Fockers, we meet Greg's parents and see how he is the way he is. His parents are the complete opposite of Ham's. They're very like freewheeling and free love, and dad is a former lawyer.
And it's even interesting.
Dad.
They're all taking a road trip to the parents' house. Greg is again trying to really bond with the dad. When they pull up to the house, Greg's dad is like shirtless, gardening or whatever he's doing out front. He's like, "Are those your parents?" Because they're like dressed very loudly, and they just aren't, probably what Jack is accustomed to or what Jack expects from adults.
Very serious and, kind of always, in those interactions, it very much reflects how he is with people. He's kind of standoffish, kind of aloof for various reasons. His mom follows suit, but she meets the Fockers and she likes the mom. She's like, hey, this is kind of nice. And she sees how much Greg's parents are actually express love to each other. They're not like afraid of that. And, the dad was a lawyer turned at home dad, so he's very emotionally aware, and she's a sex therapist, so she is very open with things, and I think that's appealing to the mom because she's lived with this stifled, contained marriage and way of looking at family with Jack for a while. She seems drawn to them, and Jack just immediately is kind of rejecting them. He's just like, no, I don't want this. I don't like this. You can see Greg being a little embarrassed about his parents and their presentation. He knows how Jack will receive them and how it might be a reflection on him. We were talking earlier, Erin and I, we were talking about how Greg, you can see from his parents why he is a people pleaser and maybe why he is anxious. He didn't have much structure growing up. And when there is somebody authoritative, he might respond by saying, I have to do whatever they tell me.
Who were very supportive to a fault. We were both laughing, like where they have all the ribbons and trophies, and Jack is like, what? I didn't even know they made a 9th place trophy. What is this? And then the dad's like, oh no, we have more. There's 10th place and 11th place. He's like, what? Why would you even display this?
It's really funny to me, though. Do what you gotta do, but like, confidence, he's so proud.
He's the biggest. He's just like, I'm so proud of my boy. And Jack, good example of the two different worlds and the mindsets. Now Greg is trying to live between both worlds, like where he wants Jack's approval. It was like, Jack is probably like, we only display first place trophies. Having that much acceptance from your parents, you would think it'd be very freeing, but it probably does create a lot of anxiety because Greg probably never really knew exactly who he was or who he wanted to be.
Yeah, feedback he got was kind of always positive. And so if you don't get any feedback that's constructive, maybe lovingly guiding, it might give a kid a false sense of who they are, or maybe just kind of feel like I don't really know who I am, or maybe I can't handle things that are kind of tough. And, when people do criticize me or are rude, I don't think that's necessarily the way Greg is. I think he's sensitive and can somewhat handle his own, but he definitely had some people pleaser tendencies because he didn't really have that structure, and he had that kind of one-way feedback where it was just, you're great no matter what you do. And I'm not trying to put that down. If anybody else does that parenting style, more power to you.
I want everyone being yelled at
saying, this was very
you want
exaggerated.
To have, not to the extreme of Jack and not to the extreme of the Fockers. Some people thrive in that. Some people thrive in like I had the hippy dippy parent and I was like, really, look at me now. It creates a state of anxiety of like, well, I have so much uncertainty because I don't really have a clear set path because I wasn't really encouraged. It was just kind of like, whatever you really want to do is fine. It's like, well, I don't know what I want to do. That's the problem.
Kids actually do crave and need guidance. They may not act like it. They need that. Otherwise, you're kind of leaving them alone in it. With Greg's parents, he was very much loved and cared for, put more free choice and supporting your feelings.
I don't know if she is a psychiatrist or a sex therapist. I'm sure she was very encouraging, like, how are you feeling? Dustin Hoffman's character seems like he was very in touch with his emotions and feelings too.
Yeah, for sure was. I mean, with his little Hawaiian shirts and Tai Chi, he definitely was not afraid to just be himself, which I think that's pretty cool. They both are very not afraid. Greg's parents are not afraid to be themselves. They're not ashamed. However, they didn't seem to have a lot of boundaries. In one particular case, they were like, oh yeah, Greg lost his virginity to the housekeeper who was apparently a lot older. And they were just like, cool. But we all knew about it, and we're just going to talk about it right in front of you guys, your future in-laws. And Pam and Greg are getting married in this one, in case you haven't seen this. So they are planning the wedding and everything. But yeah, that's kind of like a lack of boundaries, lack of privacy. It's got to be kind of tough.
Yeah, knowing everything so open, too.
Especially if you are kind of more an anxious child.
And also, they probably didn't let Greg be a kid or even a teen. There was a lot of parentification, or however you say that, like where they really let him be part of the adult roles. They're having those adult conversations with him, too. It is a little more freeing and a little more open. That's not always the best way to parent because there aren't as many boundaries.
I think it really depends on the kid, but it seems like Greg grew up knowing he was loved, but he maybe has some anxiety and, like we talked about, people-pleasing tendencies and maybe just some shame about certain things.
Well, and that's also, you don't really want that shared with your possible future father-in-law,
it's awkward. Especially if he's a former retired CIA agent and sees the housekeeper's child who has an uncanny eyebrow resemblance to Ben Stiller. And then the whole plot with Jack trying to get the DNA and the truth serum to be like, is that your kid? But yeah, it really is a collision of two worlds of over control versus we're going to give just love and free structure and let the child kind of choose, so it's very opposite spectrums in parenting. And even where they live, I thought that was interesting. Like Pam's parents are in New York and Greg's parents are in Miami. They're just even in opposite coasts. And like the perception of people that live there, like down south is kind of more relaxed and up north is more tight. But yeah, it is really interesting to see that and to get a glimpse into Greg's world and where he comes from and that he's on his home territory. He maybe doesn't have to be as intimidated. He's kind of presumably since Meet the Parents been able to hang out with the family more. Maybe Jack has been a little more comfortable with him, but he clearly is still always going to be suspicious because he thinks the housekeeper's kid is his. Gives him a truth serum and tries to get it and gets a DNA test. Realize ultimately it's not his kid. It's some baseball player. Fun. And then even the cat, Jinx, that they bring is a dominating control freak, which is like, Jack's personality mirrored in the cat. And he does succeed in flushing the Fockers dog. He just goes swirling down. He's all blue from that yucky blue toilet chemical stuff. But yeah, I thought this was really interesting because I remember when this came out, like Meet the Parents was like 2000 and Meet the Fockers was 2004. So I was, high school and college around that time. And I remember thinking it was pretty funny, but I was like, oh my gosh, I would hate to be in Greg's position. I remember just feeling really bad for him as an anxious person who's very people pleasery. I can relate more to the parenting style that Greg has, but not in the same way. It wasn't a little different, but less structured.
Up. So my mom was more of a Fox, and my dad was more like Jack, I guess. That creates a lot of anxiety.
I could kind of see that.
For a child, it's like, how am I supposed to act? Am I supposed to be relaxed with this parent or show no emotion? That's hard.
Yeah. I think my dad was kind of Jack, but I didn't live with him very often, and he would go back and forth with things because of the issues that he had. He did have moments of that. I guess I'm just speaking more in terms of my mom. My mom did raise us, and so I think she was always working. She just didn't really have any time to regulate. She was very busy. That can create a lot of anxiety. I'm not blaming. My mom did the best that she could do, and that was a lot. It was
a lot of kids.
5 kids, so that's a lot. She just worked. She had to work a lot and couldn't really set up things for us. I remember I was a child who craved structure and discipline, but I didn't have the words, and we just didn't have the resources.
Yeah, I think I've talked about it in the past. I feel like being the youngest, I often got the short shaft of that. My siblings, especially my older ones, were always in structured sports and activities. I had to sign myself up for chorus in elementary school and middle school, because I wanted to do something. But I never was in any sports or never in anything. And I do have resentment for that. But I do wish that they would have been like, okay, because my mom got very loosey-goosey, and she always was, but she got more so with, when it was me. I think she was just done parenting.
By the time she got to the end.
My brother's always jokes and says, yeah, by the time you came, mom was just kind of done having kids. I'm like, oh, great. That's really awesome to hear. Yeah.
I think that's the plight of the youngest when you have a large family. It really, at least maybe in that time. I don't know about now if it's changed. For sure. It doesn't fit that pop psychology model where we got everything and we got baby. That's not at all what it is. And not having somebody check in on you is not a great thing. It's not a fun thing. For me, it was a very nerve-wracking thing. I did not like
making
it.
Sure I'm doing my homework, or is anyone checking to see that I walked home okay from elementary school? Like just little things, because it's just like, whatever, she's working or they're working. But yeah, it is kind of like having the adult conversations with you as a teenager or young kid, not a young adult. You feel like you're a young adult because you're having these conversations with your mom, like that's, I felt like there wasn't really the boundaries, which it seems like with Greg's family. They just were like, oh, we'll just talk about anything freely with Greg his whole life. That's how I felt with my mom after a certain age. This is weird.
I didn't have that with my mom. I kind of had that with, just because I had older siblings and they just probably were doing their thing and I heard it. Not total. It's not like stuff, but just like stuff that you don't want to hear, which as a kid you shouldn't really know about, just different things. Yeah. For my mom, it was inadvertently.
Just because you overhear stuff
of our house, a lot of things. But the youngest does not have it easy in a large family. And I'm not saying that this is not true for other people. I think no kid has it easy in a large group. Maybe just in general, being a kid is tough. My mom was the youngest of 5, and she described herself as like, she felt like she was kind of spoiled and everything. But I don't know if I even see that. I had a little bit of a separation, like between my 2 oldest sisters, and then I have twin sisters right above me that are only a year and a half older than me. So there's kind of a little bit of a division in that. And I think my older 2 sisters saw differences in that because my dad was probably living with them more when they were growing up, whereas my dad was out of the house when I was like 6. And I only kind of knew him in a certain way that he maybe wasn't back then. And I think sometimes it was said that, because of not having a structure, which I so wanted, and a lot of kids need it, that my sisters and I were spoiled. That's just so wrong, because we kind of were just free falling a lot, and we kind of just had each other. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just trying to say that was my experience of it. And I think they can maybe misperceive that.
It's
not
a different
good
childhood,
thing,
because my oldest is 10 years apart from me. The next is 7 or so. It is a different childhood from, from even looking at the pictures of them. I'm like, totally different, because they had my parents were in a different state of mind.
Pros and cons. I've tried to talk about this. I don't know if anybody really takes my point of view into account, but I do think both had pros and cons. I wasn't there for the first part. That probably had its rough points, but not having rules and nothing looked after department at certain points is not
right.
That's a really odd. I never understood that. I was always like, I don't know. I just always felt like when that would be said, I was just like, I feel so bad. I couldn't put it into words, but I was like, it was like a re-wounding. I was like, why am I being blamed for this? I don't get it. Family dynamics are weird.
We're talking about different types of families, and so it's all related.
But families are weird. That's our assessment.
Meet the Fockers and Meet the Parents. They definitely showcase different styles and how spouses interact with each other, and the kids are based on that too. It's different. They are weird.
That's our assessment, people.
That's the Wicked Psychotherapist rundown. Yeah,
that's our analysis. But yeah, so I wanted to
ask
I like these. Our fun question, which is, I was going to ask about like which parenting style you'd like more to have had, but I think I'd rather ask, where would you have liked to have grown up, in New York or Miami?
Well, you know how I feel about New York, but I guess, when would I be growing up in Miami? If it's Miami in the 80s or 70s, maybe. I don't know. Of those choices, I might choose New York, but maybe more upstate New York, not the city, not Manhattan. Maybe where it's a little more woodsy, maybe almost Canada, New York. So I choose New York, but
really upstate. Yeah, I agree. I would choose New York as well. I'm not a fan of the heat. I feel like maybe I would have felt more attuned to the city if I had been there. Like, I wouldn't have loved now who I am, but maybe, I don't know, I think maybe I'm accustomed to it.
My mom grew up
something,
in the Bronx, Yonkers, and she loved it, and she thrived on it. She always would pick a city location, no matter, because she just felt more connected in the city. So, I mean, I did appreciate when I'd go there, and I liked it. And, I liked Manhattan, but I don't know. I guess from different family and different things, it just has really made me not like New York. It's not the whole state.
I love the things that you have access to in the city, but crowded places where there's lots of people, I don't love. I do like a lot of upstate New York. I do think it's very nice. Yeah. And there's a lot of cool
by the
things
beach,
there,
like Long Island looks really pretty. That's so far from everything; it would be hard to live there unless you're really rich.
Yeah, for sure. It's pretty expensive. Well, in both cities, expensive. Miami's very expensive. But let us know what you think. This was definitely different from Adam. Don't worry, we're not leaving him. Let us know your thoughts and feelings. Anything you want to add, anything you want us to know, anything outside of this. We love hearing from you. We are on all socials. Tell a friend, write us a review,
share
5 stars, please. Well, that'd be great.
Have a great week. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Wicked Psychotherapists podcast. Be sure to like and follow us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.